Help me welcome Lisa Teichmiller. She is a betrayal recovery coach, speaker, mentor. She's been married for 40 years. She's also a grandmother known as Zsa Zsa, and she is the founder of a coaching practice, Life Design Coaching, helping women rebuild their lives after heartbreak, betrayal, and loss of identity. Lisa is certified through the BPT Institute under Dr. Debi Silber and has coached women all over the world. Her story and perspective are deeply grounded in faith, healing, and transformation. Lisa's story is compelling because it's not polished perfection, it's actually lived transformation. She has a rare combination of deep pain, practical wisdom, warmth, humor, faith, and decades of real life marriage and motherhood experience. What makes her interesting is not just that she coaches women through betrayal recovery, it's that she has walked through this heartbreak, rebuilding, identifying shifts, forgiveness, and growth herself. And she now helps other women do the same. Lisa, welcome and tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for having me on your podcast. I've been a little nervous when we do these type of, I call them opportunities, but
Yes.
it is such a blessing to be here. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, how I ended up here, really in ways either on this podcast or even in coaching. I was someone in my past who I was an interior designer and I helped people redesign their homes and build these beautiful landscapes of what they wanted to walk in every day. But today I help people really redesign their life. And really they're walking into a life and to a room they never expected. So I really see both design and healing in some ways metaphorically kind of the same
Mm-hmm.
because in our lives when we're doing a design work, we're really trying to restructure, we're trying to rework, we're trying to take something that's not working and make it work. And that's what we do in healing. We do the same, especially with betrayal. It literally shatters your life, it shatters the room. And you have to go back in and totally rebuild, really from the foundation up. So that is really from my own story of me walking through betrayal. And you'll learn later in this podcast that I just felt like God just put it in my heart that this was my next calling, that I was to walk out of an interior design to start helping people with their inner design. So that's my quest as a life coach.
Well, that's beautiful. So tell us a little bit more about what part of your story led you into this work.
Okay. Well, I do believe my story is about rebuilding because I've had to rebuild, honestly,
Mm.
my life. Like many women, I spent years taking care of everyone else, over functioning, overdoing, always trying to prove myself. I mean, if all of you out there listening, if you don't suffer with that, it's really something I think. I'm also a very type A, get her done girl. And so when this betrayal happened in my life and in my marriage, it just changed everything. It changed my whole focus. It changed that I couldn't be a fixer. I had
Mm.
to step back and I couldn't abandon myself anymore. And that's what we do a lot of times when we're walking through betrayal or hardship. We have a tendency to abandon ourselves. And I had to learn not to do that because I had to look at my patterns of betrayal in the
Mhm.
past. So it
Mhm.
really, honestly, it became a transformation of my entire life
Mm.
when this hit me because it was even going back and bringing back childhood wounds that I needed to address. So
Mm.
when I sit across from a client and tell them, listen, I know that your life is shattered right now, but really this is an opportunity like you don't even know that you can
Mm.
transform your whole life from.
Mm.
Because I do believe as a coach, and I personally have experienced that you really have to choose healing because if you don't, you just let your life just completely stay in the past.
Mm.
And we all know that we need to live in the present, which is hard
That's
because
right.
what we do, we're haunted by the past and then we're fearful of the future. And
Mm.
that's what I try to help my clients with their nervous systems in our sessions to really just how do we stay in the present? How do we take that next breath? But
Mm.
one thing too, I just want to share over time, God has been using the hardest seasons of my life
Mm.
and really molding me, shaping my compassion and really my wisdom to
Mhm.
really help clients to become whole again.
Mm.
And it's not me. I want to say that. I am just a vessel I am
Yes.
just a vessel that walks women. I mean, I hate to be so graphic, but I really do believe this. I feel like I walk people out of hell back into the light again,
Mm,
because it's such a hard place to live in. Because there's just so much disappointment. There's so much exhaustion. So many
yes.
of my clients will really come on the calls with me and say, Lisa, I'm just so tired. And I
Mm,
totally understand because you know what? When betrayal happens, you still sometimes have to be a mother and you have to go to work and you still you have to function in your everyday life, but inside, internally, you're just in a chaotic state of mind. And
mm,
so it is exhausting. But I just want to say that, during that betrayal season, I did a really good job. I always say I should get an Academy Award because I looked like I was functioning on the outside, but
mm,
I was so exhausted from carrying everything emotionally on the inside. So sometimes healing begins the moment we stop really abandoning ourselves. And that's really a very important step that I try to help my clients really get a handle on, that self-care is of the utmost. I'm a big advocate of self-care. I would call myself maybe almost a spa junkie, but it's really important that the other day I was just talking to a group of women. I've just started, 6 of them. They're walking through betrayal. And one
mm,
of the questions I asked them what was one of their favorite flowers when they after they told, each one of them had to in that session tell how they got there and to
yeah.
tell what had happened and to kind of share a little bit about their D-Day when they found out. And
Mm,
after they had to tell that, they had to share them what their favorite flower was. And I'm sure
mm.
that they were wondering, like, what is this about, right? So at the end of our session, I said, I know it's crazy that I had you share, your really hard season and a really hard part of your story. But then I asked you what your flower was. And I said, I want you to go out today or this week to go out and buy that favorite flower and do something that makes you smile and makes you happy.
Mhm.
Because when you walk through betrayal, there's not many happy days and there's not many days that you want to smile.
Wow, I love that you had them do that because it just puts something tangible to that whole concept of self-care. And we know self-care can be those outward things, but also those inner things, which I also hear you're sharing here how so much of that is related. And I
Mhm.
know some of your background, which I've loved getting to know you over the few years we've known each other.
Right.
You do have a unique background. So, yes, you've been through this painful story, but you once were an interior designer.
hmm
And I know you see some connections. So can you explain to us how do you see that connecting to the work that you do today?
Well, for years, I helped people pick out paint and stone and new layouts and textures and all those fun things. By the way, I want you to know, being an interior designer is not all just fun and fluff. It is a lot of stress and deadlines, and there's a whole lot of other technical things behind being an interior designer than just what the finished product looked like. So I want to give a shout out to all interior designers out there. It's a lot of hard work, but I think what the correlation for me is that I used to do that with clients, but now I'm helping clients determine new boundaries, new identity, a new
Mhm,
space. What's the new space going to look like in
mhm,
their mental state, right? So it's kind of taking the design piece, and actually my coaching is called life design coaching because you
mhm,
are redesigning your life out of the rubble of a betrayal. And
yeah.
so, yeah, and I think that when you rebuild after this betrayal and heartbreak, you have a different view. There's really your life is completely in some ways transformed. And I think that you have to look honestly too sometimes. And I would go into a interior project and we would see the ugliness of the room, right? And
Mhm, mhm.
and the goal was to make it pretty again. Well,
Right.
there's nothing more uglier than betrayal, and we have to find ways to take what has hurt us, and
Mhm,
I call it sometimes a pain to purpose. It's
mhm,
what I've chose to do. I've
mhm,
taken my deepest pain and now I've made it full of purpose. So that's kind of what I want to say about the correlation for that. But yeah, and I just help people feel safe too. When you're building a home, we want it to be a warm and safe place. And I'm always working to walk women towards that safety again in their own life because your nervous system is completely in shock
mhm,
and you stay in that for quite a while, to be
mhm,
honest.
mhm,
And it's really, I mean, when I work with a client, first off, it's working with their nervous system to get them to just breathe. One of the things I've kind of introduced is just having them take their fingers and just feel their fingerprints and
Mm,
breathe while they're feeling them, right?
yes.
Just to just to feel their own touch is so soothing and just kind of brings them back to themselves.
Right. And it brings them back to the present, like we were saying earlier. It's hard to
Yes,
live in the present when the present is hard.
right.
So that way of bringing them back to that present is a good, tangible way to do that.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you if you can describe to us when you're working with women, and even for our listeners, especially for our listeners, what do you feel like women really need to understand about
Mm.
betrayal and healing? What would be the big points, the highlights of that?
Well, so many sat in front of me on the first, coaching session and just say, I feel like I'm going crazy.
Mm,
And I always respond with, yeah, you probably are. I know that
mm,
feeling. It's like your whole world is turned upside down. Your whole world is shattered. Your whole reality has been transformed. So let's think about this for a minute, right? The person that you trust the most, who's supposed to protect you, is the one who has harmed you. Just that in itself, right? That is just true trauma. If it's a friend that slights you or someone cuts you off in traffic, right?
mm,
We can get by with those things, but this is like down to eye color to the bone marrow pain of
mhm,
someone. And again, the betrayal impacts your mind, body, soul, and spirit.
mm,
And I just want to tell you, I said earlier, your life continues. You still have to go to ball games and you still have to fix meals and
mhm,
you still have to go to work. Yet your life internally and your relationship is just in top of mind. And then the other thing too is that healing is not linear. It's up and down, and it's exhausting. The
mhm,
other thing that you deal with is trickle truth, PTSD. We
mhm,
only think of that in war times, but it really brings on intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance. You rehearse D-Day over and over again. So,
mhm,
I mean, it's just really, really hard. And women need to be supported, not to feel shameful, even
mhm,
though they weren't the ones who were the betrayer. And they carry shame too, I want to say, and I give grace to that as well. It seems like everyone carries shame when it comes down to this. And
mhm,
so we want to hide. We don't want to pretend. But here's the thing. The past does not have to be your residence, right? Doesn't have
mhm.
to be your
Right.
place you stay. It really, it can really be just your reference. So the
Mhm,
past is your reference, but it's not your residence.
mhm,
And I see so many women get stuck. And that's one thing I really try to help as a coach. I try to help people get unstuck. I have worked with clients that have been portrayed, 10, 12 years ago, who are
mhm,
still sitting in front of me, who have been to therapy and everything. And we just get down to the bone marrow of things and say, okay, we only have one life to live. And so you can reside in this place of resentment,
mhm,
or you can walk out of it. And I've seen so many people walk out of it. And actually,
mhm,
I don't want my clients just to survive. I want you to thrive. I want you to find your purpose. I want you to find how to take the pain and transform it
mhm.
because you can. I am living proof you can transform your pain. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that comment, using it as a reference, not a residence when we think about our past. And I think that applies to lots of areas of life, not necessarily just betrayal, but
yes.
any hard things that we've gone through in the past, trauma, or just a difficult story, that we're walking through. That's some really practical language that I think can stick with us and help us to think about it in that way. This has been really helpful to hear some of those tangible things, like what you're really doing with clients. And I know you yourself, you've touched on this and mentioned it already a few times, but let's just dig a little bit more. What part of your story do you feel like really changed you the most, Lisa?
I think that it changed me the most is that I no longer abandon myself.
Mm,
I
hmm.
have a voice.
Yes.
I do not turn red flags pink anymore.
Hmm. Hmm.
My friend pool changed. I have real authentic friendships. I'm all about that.
Hmm.
If I feel any mistrust from anything or any situation, I'm just I think you become a little bit hyper vigilant. I
Yeah.
don't think you can take that to two extremes, but and I think also it kind of opened up to me what was my underneath of all my roles. If I was going to transform, how was I going to transform everything? And And I really kind of made it my mission. And here the journey has taught me boundaries. It has taught me self-respect. It's
Mhm.
also helped me to be emotionally honesty with myself.
Right. Mhm.
And the big thing, number one, was being truly surrendered to God. Because
That's huge.
he and I went round and round. Okay.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I didn't like this was part of my story at all. And so I don't pretend. I don't try to control. I attempt not to perform. I was a big performer. I mean,
Mhm.
interior design work. I did corporate training. So I was always up
Mhm.
in front and center.
Mhm.
And I really don't really shy away from being up front and center anymore. I'm okay sitting here in my little office in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
God has given me the privilege to talk to women from all over the world, not
Mhm.
just here in the States. I get to work in places of Europe, Africa,
Wow.
everywhere. God has opened up my world, but it's trusting God in the middle of the uncertainty has just really grown my faith so, so much. And I mean, God is really, He's my everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've had women sit across from me. This makes me want to cry. And I won't want to cry, but it's like I've had women sit across from me who are going like through breast cancer, but they're also going through betrayal. And the
Mm.
betrayal is worse than the breast cancer. I've had women sit across from me who have lost children, but say the
Mm.
betrayal is worse than what they experienced, you know? So it's like, you know, I don't really understand if you've not been through it. Can you really understand the devastation that it brings to your entire life? Because it shatters everything. It changes all your relationships too. So
Mhm.
you're not just rebuilding back a marriage, you're rebuilding back a life, and you're rebuilding relationships with other people because your identity and trust have been so damaged.
Yeah.
But there's just a really good point I want to say about that. You know, our identity is in Christ.
That's
And
mhm.
we try to make it something else, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that I really try to stay true to. And yeah, I hope I answered that question, but
Yes, you did beautifully. And it kind of leads right into the next question, which is how has God really shown up in your story? And I'm hearing you say that your relationship even with God changed through this process. Would you agree?
absolutely, in
Mhm.
so many ways. And he was just so gracious to me because I was there for a couple of times. I wasn't really a very good student. I wasn't a very good steward of what I was going through. So I just want to put it all out there that it got ugly for me.
Mhm.
And anyone listening would probably understand what I'm talking about. But I guess mostly I want to say is that God just really took his time with me and rebuilt me little by little. And I'm so gracious for that. I mean, through scriptures, through people. Sometimes he'd talk to me through the radio. I swear there'd be some sermon on, and I'm like, that sermon is just for me that's on the radio. And it was just amazing. And I think one of the biggest ways God showed me was teaching me that pain did not disqualify me
Ah,
because I felt
yes.
so disqualified. I felt
Mhm.
like, oh, you know, no one's going to think I'm credible. No one's going to think because the shame that comes with this and what society has done such a great job of making
Mhm.
that, you know, if you're the one who was betrayed, there must be something certainly wrong with you. And
Mhm.
then we go back to our childhood wounds of either it's I'm not loved, I'm not enough, I'm not secure. All of those things start showing up. And so God was so gracious to me and he put a fire in me that at this point I think I don't know if my count's totally accurate, but I think I've walked at least 575 women through betrayal to healing. And I want
Incredible.
I leave this world, I want 1,000 that I can help because that was my goal that I would literally pray to God, God, you get me on the other side of this.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to be a warrior for you. I want to help people. I didn't have anyone, Stephanie. My
Mhm.
journey was very alone. We live out in the middle of nowhere. There really wasn't what I would call great counseling. I haven't really talked about my husband, and I want to share something too that I want to be very sensitive about to, you know, all your listeners. So you're listening to me and you see me on the other side, and maybe you're in the middle of this. Maybe your D-Day is just a month ago, or you're going through a really painful divorce. Maybe you're in separation, or maybe you're just in limbo. You think there's something wrong with your marriage, but you don't know what it is yet. I just want to say that, you know, God is there for you. And we got to take the judgment off of what's the right thing to do sometimes in our marriages because some marriages don't work. They don't. It takes two people to reconcile. Here's what happens with betrayal. already the person who's betraying has some real character flaws and
Mhm.
needs to work on some things, right? Because we don't betray people when we're supposed to be loving, right?
That's exactly right, right.
Right. But the other thing is once that you found out you've been betrayed, then you become unhealthy, right? So then you have two unhealthy people trying to build something back. So I always say you need to separate, and I don't mean physically or like, I don't mean go to different homes or anything. Or if that works for you, that's fine. But I'm just saying you have to separate almost your healing part where you go and get your healing, they get their healing. And then if there is something to salvage and to work towards, then
Mhm.
you move towards reconciliation. But I do think it takes a lot of individual help in healing before you can even really fathom. Because I always tell my clients, you have lost trust in yourself. And they'll say, yeah, I've lost trust in myself. And
Mhm.
so, as a coach, I try to help them build back their identity, to build
Mhm.
back their self-trust, because I want them in a good place when they want to make a decision whether they want to reconcile or move on, that they're in a place they can make that good, sound decision
That's
with confidence, because
mhm.
you lose so much confidence when you're walking through this. So
Mhm.
I know that was a whole lot, but
That brings a lot of clarity because I'm sure there are listeners that are wondering, like, what do you do in which part of the story that they might be in? Because it's true. They
Mhm.
could be in any of those stages, as you mentioned, not even knowing yet that something's going on, just knowing there's something not right. Maybe they
Right.
just found out. Maybe they are separated. Maybe they are going through the divorce. Or maybe they're just trying to get back into the working it out stage. So you can
Exactly.
address all of those things yourself so eloquently. And I appreciate you bringing that clarity because I think it's going to be important. And I really, and I know too, because I have had conversations with you over the years that, you've been married 40 years. So
Hmm.
marriage has obviously taught you some beautiful things as well as hard things. So I'm sure
Right.
it would be a good place to come back to now and maybe share some of that with us as well.
Well, this is kind of cute. My husband and I, we were talking about me being on this podcast, and he is such a supporter of me. I mean, think about it. It's just amazing. He actually called me up and prayed for me before I even got on this podcast. So if that tells you how
Mhm.
far our relationship and marriage has grown, I just want to hope that we give somebody some hope out there that people
Yeah,
can change. But here's the thing, marriage is not built by perfect people, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And so we had to go through a lot of growth and humility and, my gosh, just a total rebuilding of one another. I mean, God's grace has been so abundant for both of us. My husband often says how grateful he is that God woke him up. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we always, no one else knows this but us at the table, that when we're sitting with all of our children, we'll always kind of wink at each other like, wow. And we did
Mhm.
not stay together for the kids. So I want to make that sure because that statement could sound like that.
Yeah.
It's that when we do have the moments with the kids and the grandkids, we actually appreciate it to the max,
Yeah.
because it could have been different, and for some of you listeners out there, it is different. And your dynamics of your family have changed. And for me, there is absolutely no judgment. Like I'm saying, there are some marriages that two people, they it just doesn't work, and it's not because it does take two people. And um, I'm so grateful that, we worked out, but I just want to be very, very conscientious and respectful for those who may be listening and they weren't able to work it out. Sometimes it just doesn't work. And I work with all clients, divorced. I walked people through divorce, all of that. So I'm really a judgment-free zone. I have very
Right.
little judgment on all of that because each one of our stories are so different, just like our fingerprints, as we started out talking about.
That's
I
right.
mean, every one of our stories is different.
Mhm.
All those six women that I heard their betrayal stories on Tuesday morning, every story totally different, right?
Mhm.
The same, I do believe it's somewhat of the same pain, but the
Mhm.
stories that get them there are different. But it's just that I'm just so grateful. I mean, honestly, I'm just so grateful.
Mhm.
And in regards to what I think makes a marriage work, well, first of all, it's honesty. There's that.
Right. That's important for sure.
But I don't know who said this. I think it might have been Lisa Turkis. So I don't know. I think it was, but something about that like oxygen in the room, that's what trust is, true relationship.
Mm.
So if you don't have, both of
Mhm.
you don't have your oxygen going well and you don't have your trust, it's probably going to kill over and not do very well. So, all relationships, though, with our children, with our
Mhm.
work, and especially in our marriages,
Mhm.
trust has to be of the utmost respected aspect of your relationship. Because if you don't have that, honestly, it's going to be pretty daunting that it will be a successful outcome.
Like that really has to be the foundation, is a thought that came to me when you were saying that. Like if you don't have that, then it's just going to be a really rocky foundation.
Mm. Yeah, it is. You're not going to be footed very well, right? Well, let's just
There
go
you
to a
go.
foundation of a home, right? Let's go back to
Right,
design
exactly.
here, right? I mean,
Yeah,
foundation of a home can't have
yeah,
any cracks, right? You
right.
do not want a leaky basement. So
No,
there you go.
but yes, I love that. It's like it's just true, like the foundation, and then all the other beautiful things can be built onto that solid foundation. So yes, that's a great analogy. The audience, it's male and female. So is there something that you would particularly want the women who might be listening today to know who may have gone through betrayal?
I first of all want to say that I'm sorry this is a part of your story, that it's devastates your life, and really when it happens, you just feel like all is lost. But I've seen so many of my women come so disconnected with themselves that they walk back to themselves. And
Mm.
actually, they walk back to themselves wiser, kinder, stronger, and really whole again. And I know if someone is listening today that feels, completely broken or lost, I want them to know that they are not too damaged. They're not too far gone. There is hope, and I do believe hope is the lifeline to healing.
Yes, yes,
We
I
can't
do.
we can't lose that hope, and that you just never know the beginning of what's going to become of you from all of it, right? We don't get to choose what happens to us, but we get to choose what we do with it.
Mhm.
And I can't stress enough, don't give up on yourself, right? Don't abandon yourself.
Yes,
And
that's true.
and that's one of the things that God really taught me. Lisa, don't abandon yourself. You don't, we don't need to do that.
Mhm.
I'm here for you. I'm here to give you your strength. I'm here to give you your guidance. And he does. So and I want to tell you too that I do work with clients that are not Christian. It's a little different, but also it's given me an opportunity to be a light and to actually share that God was the ultimate surrender for my life and my story. So I
Mhm.
don't back away from that. In some ways, I'm somewhat bold because I don't believe my husband or I would be where we are today had we not really surrendered our situation and our circumstances to him
Mhm.
for the
Mhm.
foremost. So he was the guiding light. And pain can change you, but it
Mhm.
doesn't have to define you. And I see that so much. They let this story define them, and it doesn't have to. It actually can be the catalyst to living even a more awake life. I have so many women say to me, I feel so awake now. I feel like I've awakened to my life.
Mhm.
And again, it's where God can take pain and make it purposeful. So in God's economy, it doesn't make sense though, does it? Right?
Right,
Doesn't
right.
make sense, but that's how it works.
That's how it works. And it makes me also think of the verse that tells us that he works all things together for our good.
Mhm.
Because even this really hard, painful story, and I am not making light of it. I have not experienced it, but I have had friends who have, you
Yeah.
being one of those, and I can only imagine how painful that would be.
Yeah.
Yet we know somehow, and we see evidence in your life and others as well, that God really can use those painful parts of our stories for our good and His glory. And you're clearly doing that in bringing glory to Him through helping your clients, even as you said, those who may not be believers yet, bringing that light to them. And I love the work that you're doing, Lisa, and there's such a need for it. And I do hope if someone's listening today, they'll reach out to you. All of her details will be in the show notes so that you can reach directly out to Lisa if you are experiencing betrayal and you just want to have a conversation with her and maybe just get that started because I do highly recommend Lisa for this particular area of coaching. I just think she is such an expert in it, partly because of her own experience. And as you're hearing her today, she has a goal to reach 1,000 because that's that many more
Well,
lives that are
it's not a
changed.
goal you really want. It's so relevant and it's happening.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
for sure.
I just want to be someone out there that so they don't have to go alone.
Yes, yes, exactly. And as we are wrapping up, we know it's really so much bigger than obviously that number. And I would say that you may very well reach many more thousands after that. And I don't want, as you said, I don't want anyone to walk through it, but I do genuinely want those people who are walking through it to get this kind of help that they need. And
Yes.
for them to find their voice, to them to bring in that shame and all of that to the light, because we know shame wants to live and can only live in isolation. But when it's brought to the light and they are given wise counsel, which you obviously give, then they can have this type of an ending to their story where they get to
Yes.
enjoy whatever their path is. It may not always be restoration, I realize that, but whatever it is that God leads them towards, that they will be able to also have a victorious, ending of their story, or maybe even next chapter of their story, not necessarily just the ending, right? This is like
I
another whole chapter.
I think it's beautiful what you just said. That was absolutely perfectly said. So thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
adding that.
for sure.
Perfect. Just perfect.
Well, is there one thing that you would like to leave with our listeners as we wrap up?
I just want to say that now all that we've been through, I've kind of shared all that. I just want to go in present day that, my husband and I, we want to leave a legacy in our bloodline, that
Yeah.
forgiveness,
Mhm.
along with God's guidance to our grandchildren, that, they'll probably hear one day
Mhm.
about our story. And we just want to show them that with God's guiding light, we were able to shine.
Yes.
And that's really our goal too. My husband also is a SYMBIS facilitator with me, which
Mhm.
is saving your marriage before it starts. We work with engaged couples and even couples who just kind of want to reboot. They take an assessment and then we sit down with them on Zoom and just talk to couples and we get to share our experience. And it's something we really love to do
Oh,
together. So
yeah.
we actually do marriage work together. So that's been really helpful. He doesn't really work so much on where I work one-on-one with betrayal with women, but he does help me with the with couples, and it's just been a really fun thing to interject. And we also get to share what doesn't work for sure. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. I love that y'all are getting to work together. I didn't realize that part, so I appreciate you including that. As you described, sitting there at the table with your family is the ultimate, right? But then you have this little cherry on the top that you get the opportunity to help other couples start out in a really good way. That's
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah, it has been. It's been really, really something we really enjoy doing together.
Yeah. As I mentioned, you guys can find Lisa in our show notes below. You can also just simply go to lisateichmiller.com. We'll just say that one in case they're listening and driving and can't reach those show notes yet. But all of her other information is in the show notes. So please come back and reach out to her if you are experiencing this. She is truly just a gift to you during this time. So thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your story and for being with us today. Just really thankful for you and for all you're doing that's bringing God so much glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.